As we speak, our president, Donald Trump, is going to the Middle East on a public corruption tour. He's no less corrupt than Edwin Edwards of Louisiana. In fact, he's way more corrupt. Edwin Edwards took $400,000. Well, in the Middle East, Donald Trump will cement deals totaling in the billions in exchange for favorable treatment by the U.S. federal government for these Gulf countries. The key difference is that Donald Trump isn't hiding it like other corrupt officials are. He's not ashamed. He's not doing it in secret. His corruption is wildly public, and his hope is that by doing it publicly, he can con the American people into thinking that it's not corruption because he's not hiding it. His first trip is to these three countries because these are the three countries that have agreed to pay Donald Trump money. Donald Trump is going to collect tribute.
Sam Stein, this piece about that which you do out in the open can't be illegal because you're doing it out in the open is a theme that's run through 9 years of Donald Trump's public life. But these are relationships that have really sort of strained the American public's tolerance for closeness of their leaders. And even Donald Trump seemed to speak to that in 2017 when it comes to Qatar, the nation that gifted him or is trying to gift him a new Air Force One. Let me show you that.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level. And in the wake of that conference, nations came together and spoke to me about confronting Qatar over its behavior. I decided, along with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, our great generals and military people, the time had come to call on Qatar to end its funding. They have to end that funding and its extremist ideology.
Again, Donald Trump himself has been among a harsh and vocal critic of Qatar. Lots of Republicans. We showed you Ted Cruz at the top. But to Luke's reporting and your own, I mean, this is a Trump 2.0 version, whereas Trump Tower Moscow was one of the larger scandals of the first year of the Trump presidency. Was he or was he not trying to build one? This is all about launching the hotel with the pool on the floor 1,000 in Abu Dhabi, out in the open.
Yeah, I think actually Senator Murphy sort of undersells it in a way. Yes, of course, he's doing it out in the open, and because of that, he thinks that he should get away with it. But in fact, it goes beyond that. He thinks that if you question the ethics of this, that you're a sucker. I mean, that's the word that he used, saying, why would you not take the $400 million plane? You're not a loser. You know, you should take the free gift. And so it's not just public corruption out in the open. It's public corruption justified as a rational, if not a smart deal. And yes, it creates an insane amount of whiplash. It's not just that you see the 2017 clip in which he's praising Rex Tillerson and talking about his great generals and going off on Qatar. But it's to note, as Luke does, that where the Republican Party was just a couple of years ago. I mean, if you think back about the hypocrisy here, you know, it was Hunter Biden's dealings with Burisma that they had accused as an impeachable offense for Joe Biden because it created an unprecedented conflict of interest. Well, this is a $400 billion gift out in the open. These are hotels being run by the president's kids. This is a crypto meme coin that the president is using the White House grounds to help promote. The standards that were applied to past presidents are not being applied to Donald Trump. He is getting away with it. And I know it causes some discomfort with Ben Shapiro, Ted Cruz, and frankly with others like Rand Paul and even Ron Johnson. But I don't think Trump cares. I think Trump just doesn't care anymore. And that is also the distinction between Trump 1.0 and Trump 1.2. There were some pressure points back then. For instance, MBS. You know, he was involved in the slaying of Jamal Khashoggi. That was a problem for Trump back in 1.0. Now he's cozying up to him and said, today, I might love him too much. There is very little shame in Trump 2.0. He's fine with these acts. Maybe it's because he doesn't think that the laws of political gravity apply to him.
I mean, they may or may not, but the politics of impeachment are very familiar to him. And this is not a brand that the Republican Party is going to be able to wrap itself around in the midterms. Sam, is the Republican sort of, what we could see public facing, is there more of that under the surface, or the folks speaking out basically? Yeah.
Oh, total discomfort with it. I mean, if you talk to them, if you saw what was happening on the Hill, there are some people like the Tommy Tubervilles of the world who say, it's a great deal, good for him. But the others are, very discomforted by it and don't like talking about it, and will do the classic, well, I haven't really looked into the details of it yet. There's another element to this, though, that I think is worth considering, which is relative to how things had been going since Liberation Day. This past week had given Trump some things that he could really talk about, right? He has backed off the trade war with China. I mean, there's still a 30% tariff going in, but there's positive economic news based off of that. He had his prescription drug executive order, which he had touted as the biggest Truth Social post in the history of Truth Social. Those are things he wants to talk about. Instead, in kind of classic Trump fashion, he's stepped on a rake and complicated his messaging, in which now a lot of the headlines that he wanted to generate are complicated by the fact that he's also taking a $400 million plane from Qatar.
Sam, this idea of a string of bad news weeks, this used to really bother him. He would wake up in the morning and rage tweet against all of the news coverage, and he does a little bit of that. It's clear to see that he still watches my friends on this network in the morning and gets angry at the things that are said. But what seems to trigger him are things that no one has been harsher about than the Wall Street Journal editorial page. I mean, basically describing him as caving to China, blinking,
right,
and basically making a mess, and then caving when China made clear that they weren't going to back down. The corruption in plain sight is not how folks on this network have described the plane gift. It's how MAGA voices are describing it. The voices criticizing the disappearing of people who protested policies they didn't like is being attacked by Candace Owens and Joe Rogan and other MAGA figures. I mean, do they care about politics anymore?
I think so, for sure. I mean, they don't want to have a situation in which the Republican Party is running away from them because he's so politically unpopular. But I have noticed sort of what you're hinting at, which is they don't seem to care as much. And I'm kind of curious as to why. I mean, maybe it's just that he thinks he can bend the political universe to his will. Maybe he's been heartened by how many top media figures and institutions in academia as well have kowtowed to him and bent the knee. But maybe, and this is just a theory, nothing to bet on, maybe it's just because in his heart of hearts he knows that he's done after this term in office. And he doesn't have to care as much about this stuff. Certainly, I don't think he cares as much about J.D. Vance's political future as his own. And so he's trying to, he's trying to do what he wants to do, which is, every day is a new executive order, every day is a new target, every day is a new controversy. He's definitely in the news, obviously, all the time. But I agree with you. There's something interesting and kind of underappreciated by how much less he seems to outwardly care about the polls and the negative news coverage, with, of course, a few caveats here and there.
Well, it is interesting, Luke, because what seemed to trigger him so clearly in the first term was threat of prosecution. I mean, he feared Robert Mueller, and he was angered by Jeff Sessions for not protecting him from his own Justice Department. And he badgered Bill Barr, who mostly went along and did, 99.9% of everything he wanted him to do except fire Chris Wray. But he seems sort of liberated from the fear of prosecution by running the Justice Department in his free time. But I wonder if they are trying to make things uncomfortable and difficult. I mean, is it really about sort of his singular status? I mean, the corruption in plain sight is so obvious that we're going to have to, as a country, decide if we want this or not, because there's no credible argument that that's not what it is, that the White House isn't for sale. I mean, the crypto event stars Donald Trump. If it's his own meme, I mean, it's laughable. And so it seems that it's not even about whether or not he's corrupt. It's about us and whether or not the country cares about that. Is it intentional, or are they sort of, are these reptilian reflexes in the Trump world?
Well, I mean, he's well aware of the Supreme Court ruling that he views as giving him immunity. And, he's unburdened by the idea that there could be a prosecution one day for any of these acts that he's making. And, just to bring it back to the earlier point Sam and I both made, if you look at the things that Republicans wanted to impeach Joe Biden for, they bent over backwards to try to find a connection to Hunter Biden's businesses. Well, that's very easy to do. He's awarding a dinner at the White House to people who buy the crypto coins. They wanted to see that there was money that came from Hunter Biden's businesses to Joe Biden. They sort of bent over backwards to find some checks and so forth. And here you can just see it on the financial disclosure forms that the money still comes in to President Trump. I mean, so all the things that Republicans were so outraged about during the Biden administration are amplified by 100 here. Who would have ever thought that you'd see a $400 million plane as a gift come in to the president, and the president basically called people suckers if they didn't accept it. So, yeah, I know it sure doesn't seem like there's any sense of shame. And, President Trump is basically saying he can do what he wants. He has immunity, and and there's no longer even an election to try to choose somebody else, right? So I think we're in for 3.5 more years of this.